All right. Here we go, guys and gals. And boogity, boogity, boogity. Let's go racing, drivers.
And we are here for episode 20, season 2 of the Loose Wheel podcast. Ethan's over there as always. I'm Andrew. And we have a guest hailing from the New York City, the Big Apple. And currently in Italy, he just was at Imola watching the Formula One race. We have Rome. Katie, did I pronounce your last name right?
Yes, you pronounced it first time off the rip, man. That was great. And you're one of the first people that actually pronounced my last name right, first try. So if I give you a gold star metaphorically, there's your gold star.
Yeah. So Rome goes to school with us. He has his own Formula One podcast, the Starting Grid podcast. So make sure to check that out after this, of course.
Of course, please do that. Go follow that right now. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere you get your podcasts. Go spam that right now.
And with all that being said, let's get into the reviews.
And now for last week's race reviews.
Talk about Imola. The only real racing this weekend. I don't count the All-Star race or Indy 500 qualifying.
Well, that's fair enough. Imola, I mean, it's not a track that promotes a lot of passing. So there wasn't much on-track action, but there was still some. So we got a little bit to talk about. At the start of the race, Max pulled ahead of Lando Norris, who was starting in second after Oscar Piastri had a bit of I believe it was a 3-place grid drop penalty for impeding K-Mag in qualifying. So it could have been Piastri in second, Lando in third, would have put McLaren in a great position in that race. Unfortunately for the team, that did not happen. But on the start, Lewis Hamilton got up to 7th. Nico Hülkenberg made up a spot as well. Yuki Tsunoda had a bit of a rough spot, dropping a few positions down to 9th from 7th. And then there was absolutely no action for a while. On lap 9, Alex Albon had a loose wheel.
Yes.
Yes, a loose wheel, loose front right. He was able to limp around the track back home for another pit stop. But you always love to see a loose wheel. I mean, you just have to. As Rome is showing us his Alex Albon hat. Oh, man. But Alex was able to continue the race. However, of course, from that point on, it was pretty much ruined. You go too long going slow around a track, you're going to get lapped, and it's over at that point, essentially. A few laps later, lap 13, the pit strategies start to take place. Yuki Tsunoda is able to undercut Nico Hülkenberg, and that really gets everything started with all the pit strategies. Their battle actually continues on for like 10 plus laps. Like on lap 25, they're both still battling, and they both passed Logan Sargent while still battling each other. So not a battle for points or anything at that stage in the race, but good battle. And then we start to see some drivers struggling at Imola. I mean, Perez went off into the gravel at, I believe it was Ravazza. Lewis locked up and went off into the gravel at Aqua Minerale. Tires dying on a track like that, prone to make mistakes. And then again, another lengthy period of really nothing happening, just undercuts to get passes done for positions, but no real on-track battles. But Sergio Perez on lap 40 passed Nico Hülkenberg for 9th place, and then Yuki Tsunoda 2 laps later, so able to gain some ground after struggling earlier on in the race, but still, P8. That's not where Sergio Perez wants to be. That's not where he's expected to be. That's a position he can't really be in. More battling at the back of the points. Lance Stroll gets into P10 past Nico Hülkenberg shortly thereafter. Lance Stroll then passes Yuki Tsunoda a few laps later. It was actually a really nice race for Lance, which is something we don't say often. A rare good performance for Lance Stroll. And I don't want to sound like a jerk, but that's just the way it's been for quite some time now. And that was on lap 51. And then it kind of seemed like the race was going to be over. I mean, Max is complaining about his tires dying. Lando's complaining about having no pace. And then there's a switch that flips because Lando Norris, out of nowhere, found some pace in that car. I don't know if the tires went into like a second stage of life, as they sometimes do. But that McLaren turned into a rocket ship. He was flying, catching Max at a high rate. It was a really exciting chase, and Lando probably would have got him if the race was a few laps longer than it was, but it wasn't. And he probably hurt himself by making a couple of mistakes. The car got a little squirrely as he was chasing down Max, but Max was having a rough time controlling his Red Bull as well. I mean, both drivers were battling the cars, battling the tires. Everyone's tires were dead at the end of the race, I have to assume, just based on the way that pretty much everyone had to wrangle their cars around the circuit to get to the end of the race. But Max just barely, like less than a second at the end of it, beat Lando. So McLaren, they're wishing that the race was 1, 2, 3 laps longer. Red Bull, they're happy it ended right then. The final top 10 was Verstappen, Norris, Leclerc, Piastri, Sainz, Hamilton, Russell, Perez, Stroll, and Yuki Tsunoda rounding it out. So, I mean, that's all cool. I watched it on TV, but Rome, you were there in person. What was that like?
Oh my goodness. It's like, where do I even begin to start this off? And that Sunday a couple days ago was a long day. Like I had to get up super early. We had to leave this house that we're staying at like about 9:30 local time. And then we had to drive like about 2.5 hours to Imola. So we got there around 12. And mind you, like people might not know this, or people may know this, or people may not know this, but like Imola is such a small town that like it's hard to hold the F1 event from that magnitude in such a small place. Like when we got there, we were just circling, trying to find parking spots. Everything was crowded. Everything was filled. And mind you, we got there 3 hours before the race started. Like 3 hours. Like it was unreal to me that city was that filled that fast. And that just kind of shows you that F1 is just like on the rise lately these past couple years. And when you're crowding these small towns like that, it brings in so much economy, brings so much money, brings in so much fanfare, all the king caboodle, if you will, with that. So it was very interesting. It was funny because we went into a parking garage and we had to go rogue and like park in between these two other cars by like a door entrance. We just were kind of like, just screw it, we're just gonna go there and just kind of going with our day. So luckily nothing happened, but it was good regardless. And we actually were really close. It was like about an 8-minute walk to the track from there. So we really hooked it up with that. But I mean, once we got there, I was just kind of soaking it all in. I was like, oh my God, this is like unreal. Just seeing all those people walk into the track. They had to have this like little bridge before you go into the actual track. The only problem was you had to like kind of walk all the way around to where we were, because like the paddock was on the side that the bridge was on. So we had to walk all the way around to where the grandstand seats were, which was fine. I wasn't really mad about that. And then we got into the fan zone. I got a little McLaren hat, as you see here for the audio listeners. There's like black mesh around the back here. There's orange on the front. They got the little mini McLaren swooshes all around, and then this big orange swoosh right here. And then, as these guys were mentioning before, I also got an Alex Albon hat, which I knew I had to get because listeners of the Starting Grid and people that know my F1 fandom know that I love Alexander Albon, especially last year. Like, I thought this guy was going to get a big 3-seat, but he decided to sign a multi-year contract with Williams. So be it. That's his decision. That's not mine to handle. But I mean, I gotta admit, these are
your guy.
That's my guy. That's for sure. That's my guy. But yeah, it was a lot of fun going there, and we got some like other cool hats and whatnot. And I got this like little Norris shirt. And then we went to our seats, and it was just like, it was awesome because like it was funny because right as we were walking to our seats, I think you guys probably heard of this, but Seb was going around Senna's car. Sebastian Vettel was going around Senna's cars for a few laps as a little tribute because it was the 30-year anniversary of Ayrton Senna's tragic passing at Imola. And it was really cool just to see it all happen. And then as we were walking, they all of us, the security guards, all of a sudden just tried to push us back and make a little like pathway. And we were all like, what's going on? And people were like, oh yeah, they're gonna actually back in Senna's car onto the walkway. And we actually got to see Senna's car being like trotted out towards the back part of like the little gate. And then we got to see the car come out, which was really sick. And then
That's awesome.
Yeah, we got to our seats and then watched the race, and it was incredible. And the other thing I'll mention too that I didn't mention on my podcast a couple days ago was I'm so glad I recommended this to my family. I told them I was like, we gotta get earplugs because if we go open ear trying to watch this race, our ears are deaf by like lap 10. Like there's no way that you can't watch a race without just having that in your ears because then it'll just be hell on earth for your ears to handle. Because I took mine off, just like rest my ears a little bit, let them breathe a little for like one lap. They were shooting by the main straight. Like I could barely handle. I was like, oh, I gotta put this back in. I can't handle this for that long. It's just crazy. But yeah, our seats were like right in the start and finish line. So like our seats were like right after that. They make that quick right hand turn. Like we were literally looking straight down at the finish line. Like my mom was saying, like if this was like a photo finish, she was wearing a pink shirt. So it was like if there's a photo finish, they could like see her and point her out to be like, okay, this is the line that's supposed to be at. So we were like that close. We were like row 3, like literally staring at the start finish line, and we were like across the way from the podium, like really close to the podium.
Awesome.
So it was really cool just to see that and be in that environment. And once they started going and once they started storming past the main straight, like I don't know, it's just that feeling of like the engine's just in your like body when you feel it. It's it's exhilarating. It's like you don't get that from like a MLB game, an NFL game, an NBA game, whatever. Like you only get that if you're going to an F1 race. Like when you know those sound waves vibrate in your system, it's just something that's different from a lot of these other sports that you see.
For sure.
And it was just very cool for me to experience that, and it's something I won't forget for a long time. And I was telling my co-host Shane on the podcast, I was like, I'm never gonna watch F1 the same again because you can't replicate that when you every time you watch it now. I mean, I'll still enjoy it, of course. It's like one of my favorite sports I like to watch, but at the same time, it's like nothing's ever gonna equate to that. Exactly, nothing's gonna ever equate to that. So it was just incredible. And then going into like my vantage point of the race as well in terms of how it started and how it went and everything. Like, I mean, by lap like 5 or 10, by the time Max was making those first couple turns of going into that longer straight and was out of the picture from my view, Landon was just about to cross that Qatar Airways sign and get to the start and finish line. Like that's how wide of a gap that gap was. And I was like, oh man. And once I saw that, I'm like, oh yeah, Max has got this in the bag. It's about to be another like 15-second, 20-second finish. It's about to be
easy dub.
Like exactly. We could just like hop out of here at that point. It's not even worth to watch anymore. But then like by lap 50, lap 54, I was starting to hear like, okay, like Norris is starting to catch up to him. It's like 7 seconds, 6 seconds, 5 seconds. I'm like, there's no way. This guy was so wide in terms of that gap. There's no way you're gonna be able to make that up. And then once I heard that and like we actually started seeing him getting closer and closer and closer, and I'm like, oh my goodness, this is actually about to happen. And I was turning to my mom. I was like, I hope this isn't too little too late. I really want to see this for him. Yeah. And mom was like, I don't know. It's kind of too little too late. And it was, unfortunately. The gap was 0.7 seconds to the finish line.
Yeah,
Coming into like lap 40, that was unfathomable compared to how good Verstappen was on those hard tires.
I mean, it's exciting to see that chase on TV. I can only imagine how much heightened that is by being there in person.
Yeah. And like the people in our sections were like, every time like Verstappen and Norris would come around that main straight, they were all standing up like, oh my goodness, please catch it, please do a little like overtake with the DRS type thing. So yeah, man, it was awesome. And I posted this on my Instagram, but I also got like videos of the podium with Max, Lando, and Leclerc on there as well, doing the champagne and everything. It was really cool. It was something I won't forget for a long time. But yeah, long story long. That was my story of how I was at Imola.
Yeah, I mean that sounds like an awesome experience. Like it's something that you just got to be there for it. Like it just seems like it's that sort of thing. Like you just got to be there. Like at least one time in your life.
Yeah, it's like an experience this before you die, like a bucket list type of thing. It's like you have to do it at least once to make you feel like a complete man at that point. You know what I mean? It's like I'm good now.
What for you? Like you talked about like the feeling in your body of like the engine is like inside of you, and like you hear the engine just so loud in a way that you really don't just the senses are all heightened. Like what else is there that doesn't really translate to TV from being there in person?
I think the other thing too is like most people don't know this, but there's like on-track commentators that they have like throughout the race. It's not because usually on TV you won't hear that. You would just hear the engines moving, and that's partly because the engines are so loud. The mics probably catch only that and not the commentator. But it was they had this Italian dude, of course, because it's in Italy, speaking in Italian the whole time. He would do this like little English for a couple seconds just to make sure the Americans know, because there were actually a lot of English people speaking there.
Really? Okay.
Like it was really funny. I got to tell you the story off camera though. That like it was just a really funny story. I got to tell you about afterwards. But yeah, it was really cool just to like see like all these people. It was like, and we've been here for like a couple weeks already, and my family were like, oh man, we were about to be away from Americans. Now we got to see him again. Like, what is this now? Like, what are we doing again? Like, I can't do this anymore.
We came here to get away from
just the only ones that couldn't speak Italian, and now we're getting to see Americans and English people speaking again. It's like, bro, like, come on, like, what are we doing here?
That's hilarious.
But regardless, though, it was sick. It was really.
You brushed up on your Italian?
Nah, I'm not a good Italian speaker, but my dad is trying to speak Italian too, so he's trying to learn that as a second language. So he kind of got us by with things, and he's trying to just. What's that?
It's a really cool like sounding language. Like I love the way Italian sounds. Like I'm not taking Italian next semester, but I kind of had to think about it for a second.
Yeah, the accent is like so drawn out, and my dad loves to like just cheekily play with that accent. I'm just like, Dad, what are you doing? You're not them yet. You're still an American trying to learn Italian. Like let's relax for a second before we do all this other stuff. You know what I mean?
I feel you.
Yeah, it was sick though, regardless.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Sounds like you had a great time.
Oh my God, it was awesome, to say the least.
Yeah, I will say that something that NASCAR doesn't have is you don't really feel it as much because 550 horsepower cars.
Compared to like 1 million horsepower cars with 17 in your face. That's the big
Bring back all the horses.
I'm for NASCAR, I'm gonna get a little off track here. I want more horsepower for short tracks and road courses. That's how you make the racing great. Anyway, and
NASCAR could take a lot from F1. I'm just saying that's all I'm gonna say. But
it can take a few. The biggest thing is presentation on broadcasting and social media. That's the big thing for me.
Well, shout out NASCAR for promoting the post-race fight between Stenhouse and Busch. I'm sure we'll talk about that later.
Yeah,
but
that was
what was that?
that was interesting.
That must have been nuts.
Going to Indy 500 qualifying here. Gonna make this quickly. You had fast 12 of 9 Chevrolets, only 3 Hondas. That's something to look forward to in the race. Chevrolets are faster, but I do think the Hondas will have the better fuel mileage. And the Indy 500 always seems to have a little bit of fuel mileage into it. Whether it's pitting shorter is the advantage because a caution comes out, catches the rest of the field off guard, or something else of where you just, when Rossi won his first race, he won it on a fuel mileage race. So anything can happen with fuel, and that's something to look forward to. But with that, 9 of the top 12 fast 12 were Chevrolets. All 3 Penske cars, 3 of the 4 Arrow McLaren cars. You had Dreyer and Reinbold sneak in there. You had Ed Carpenter car, and you had one other one. I'm trying to think. That makes 8, not 9.
Close enough.
Oh, Santino Ferrucci, our favorite driver on the podcast, obviously.
Podcast legend.
Yeah, Santucci. He's for AJ Foyt. Only 3 Honda entries from 3 different teams. Rosenquist from Schenck being the top Honda. Kirkwood from Andretti. He had a moment that really knocked him down on the qualifying order. And the other one was Takuma Sato in a part-time entry for Rahal, which was completely different from the other 3 Rahal cars, which is interesting to note. But those 3 Hondas fell by the wayside in the Fast 12. They did not make it in. And then with the Fast 6, or the other 3 cars that fell were VK, Pato Award, and Ryan Hunter-Reay. Hunter-Reay just didn't have the pace. But it was nice seeing the Indy-only team of Ryan Reinbold sneak into the Fast 12. Fast 6, everyone knew it was going to be Penske, just didn't know which one is it going to be. And that was answered by Scott McLaughlin, winning the pole over his teammates Power, Newgarden, all Penske lockout. First time that's happened since, I believe, 1988, I want to say.
Okay, so it's been a minute.
Yeah, but that doesn't happen often. So Penske doing it. They've been a great team for a long time. Not surprising to see their partnership with Foyt, who's one great race a year, is always at the Indy 500. It makes sense that they finally figured it out.
Yeah.
That being said, you had Santino Ferrucci in the Fast 6. He qualified 6th. And then you had the 2 Air McLaren cars of Rossi and Kyle Larson finishing 5th.
Kyle Larson was so impressive, dude.
Who I think is the greatest race car driver in the world right now, because he's great at so many different things. No knock against Max Verstappen or Palou. They just don't dominate multiple series like Larson does, which
I mean, it really is either
very
Max or Larson. I'm still gonna have to give the edge to Max just because he's so insanely dominant. But Larson's range is huge. But I mean, you can't tell me that if Max Verstappen didn't hop into another car, he wouldn't succeed as well. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but also one thing I want to quickly mention here is like bro was just like in Imola this weekend. Bro was just doing the 24 hours of iRacing of Nürburgring. So you can put him in any series that you want to with all this like splashy stuff. He can go do all in that too. So I don't know. That kind of negates that argument regardless. But I don't know. You guys know more about the entire motorsports than I do. So I'll just give that some merit.
Yeah, that is a good point though. That is a good point. Max Verstappen is not only an amazing F1 driver, but an absolute psychopath as well.
Yeah. That's for sure. He's a great sim racer. But the more interesting storyline coming from Indy 500 qualifying was Bump Day. At 4 drivers, you had the 2 Dale Coyne Hondas of Nolan Siegel and Catherine Legg. You had Marcus Ericsson in his Andretti Honda, and you had Graham Rahal in his RLL Honda.
Yeah.
All 4 Hondas once again. That's a little concerning if I'm Honda. But you also, which was interesting, had two drivers in backup cars with Ericsson and Siegel.
Yeah.
And with that means you're basically having your road course car, making that a super speedway car, which
not ideal.
Yeah, not ideal. 2 very different things. That's not something you want to do ever, but that's what they had to do because Siegel crashed Friday. He flipped, and then Ericsson had an incident Thursday, I believe. So that's what happened. That's what was leading up to it. Siegel goes out first. He didn't have a really fast run, but he ran.
Yeah.
Then it was I think it was Ericsson next, or it might have been Legg, but I don't remember. Ericsson goes. He thinks he thought the white flag was the checkered flag, so he lifted, and his lap was garbage, and he was 10 miles an hour off the pace. Across the 4-lap run, which is not close.
No.
So
how do you make that mistake? Like, that is such a rookie error. And this is a guy who isn't a rookie. Not only like extremely long racing career, Formula 1 veteran, comes over to IndyCar. He's been somewhat successful in IndyCar. I mean, he's won the 500 before.
Yeah,
like, how do you
years
make
ago
that mistake?
And second last year, I believe, or third. It's a top finish. He was looking good for a while, but that's a very rookie mistake.
Weekend to forget. Like
Yeah.
that phrase like is so perfect for
Yeah.
Ericsson's weekend. Like you have to forget it.
Yeah. Catherine Legrand, she had the fastest time, I think she did. And so she
you're
was safe. And then Ray Hall ran. He ran second fastest.
Yeah.
So it was concerning for him, just depending on how many times everyone was going to run. So after that, it was about 35 minutes left on the clock.
Mm-hmm.
Marcus Ericsson, he went out for some cooling runs at half speed just to cool the engine down. He was the only one that could do that, because if you leave your pit box, you pull your time, and he pulled his time. The other drivers were already qualified in, so you don't want to just pull your time just by leaving your pit box. So he ran around, cooled his engine with a run, and that worked because he went second fastest with he started his run early. I'm like, with 7 minutes to go, I'm like, there's a chance if he goes 33rd, bumps out Siegel runs, Siegel could knock Ericsson back out. So that was kind of an eyebrow raising move there. But as I mentioned earlier, Ericsson moved himself up to 32nd. So with enough time for one run left, you had either Siegel or Ray Hall going home, depending on how Siegel ran. Siegel's first lap was slow. He looked like he didn't have enough pace to make it. Second lap, he crashes. Going home, not a good run, but he left it all out on the track, which is very commendable. I think we'll see. He's a young guy. I think we'll see him back at the 500 in years to come. Yeah, that's what happened at Indy 500 qualifying.
Yeah, for Siegel, real quick, just like you said, everything froze for me, so I don't know if what I said got picked up, but like you said, super talented young driver. Like, this is not going to be his last shot at the 500. He's going to be there again next year, I would assume. And I mean, he's 19 from Palo Alto, California, just up the road from me. I got to support the guy. So it was disappointing to see him get eliminated, just because, like, it's young, exciting driver, but really he was not just in terms of how it actually unfolded, but he was the odd one out in terms of really everything.
Yeah. Moving to the NASCAR All-Star Race and All-Star Open for North Wilkesboro. The Open, which is, for those who don't know, you take all the guys that aren't locked into the race, throw them in the Open, top two guys make it out, and then the fan vote winner. So to start, there was just ping pong at the back, drivers bouncing off each other. Ty Gibbs leads, Bubba Wallace second. 48 laps of boring. That
happens sometimes.
Yeah, and then we had the All-Star caution, which was the planned caution at lap 50, where everyone changed tires. I'm pretty sure everyone went from the hard tire to the soft tire. Tires were not a factor this weekend with the two different compounds. The soft tire wasn't soft enough, so that was an issue. But hopefully Goodyear will work on it, bring a softer tire next year if they do this again. But coming out of the pit stops, you had Gibbs, Bowman, Bubba, Briscoe, Barry. A lot of B's there. The restart, the 77 of Hocevar squeezed the Cindric into Gregson, which caused a caution. Cindric was the only one with significant damage. I think he wound up retiring from that. No one pitted. He had a restart. Bubba and Bowman battled for second for a little bit. Barry took them 3 wide, and then Bubba scooted away from that. You had more boring, which led to Ty Gibbs and Bubba Wallace racing in, the two top-tier Toyota drivers that were in the race, raced in. Not really surprising. Noah Gragson winning the fan vote win. Kind of a surprise. I figured it would be Carson Hocevar because he had a great campaign, which I thought led the fans to vote for him. But Noah Gragson, funny guy, goofy goober, you might call him. So that's why he went in. Yeah, Stuart Haas Racing today posted a 7-minute video, or I should say several minute video, if you know, you know, of Noah Gragson just doing Noah Gragson things during the All-Star race because he's like I said, goofy goober. Anyway, the race. Joey Logano leads from pole. Kyle Busch hits Stenhouse, who spun into the wall. Stenhouse retires from the race. Surely the last time we'll speak of those two today.
Surely.
Top 5 stay out. Everyone else goes to the hard tire. I think everyone started on the soft tire. Top 5 were Logano, Keselowski, Reddick, Buescher, Blaney. Green, boring laps. And then Logano battles with Bubba Wallace for like the last 20 laps to stay on the lead lap because like you can, and that's what that was the only real racing of note throughout that. And then it was lap 100 caution. Wallace did stay on the lead lap there. Yeah, it's saying something when arguably the best battle is between a lead lap car and a lap car, or a car trying to stay on the lead lap. But anyway, after the lap 100 caution, you had Logano, Buescher, Bell, Keselowski, Blaney. Logano and Bell have a good battle for the lead on the restart. Bell slid into Logano. Hamlin made it 3 wide at that point. Bell backed out, fell to third. Logano battles with Hamlin before clearing him. That battle took about maybe 10 laps in total. And then moments later, Gibbs spins off of Kyle Busch's bumper. A few pit, Logano dominates the rest of the segment. Lap 150 caution, which was scheduled. Some cars pit. The lead at this point is Logano, Blaney, Hamlin, Bell, Buescher. Blaney had a bad launch, which screwed up the inside on the restart. Larson was up to P3 on new tires. He looked like he was going to charge to the lead, but he just stalled there. And then after the race, Logano won, led 199 of 200 laps. Real exciting race. I say that with sarcasm.
Yeah.
And then after the race, Busch and Stenhouse got in a fight, with Stenhouse landing a punch on Busch.
Dude, it was so weird because, like, watching the video of the fight, like, they're just talking. Like, it is it's an argument. I mean, they're not just talking, but, like, there wasn't anything that indicated, like, it was going to go to that next level. And then out of nowhere, Stenhouse just, haymaker right to Kyle Busch. Like, what? What? Huh? I don't know.
I think right before Kyle said okay in like a snarky attitude, like Stenhouse, like, I'm sick of this crap. And that I think that was his thinking is, yeah. And it was funny seeing the video of Kyle Busch walking up to Stenhouse just sitting there.
I saw the memes, dude. Press X to interact.
Yeah. Yeah. And another interesting thing from the fight is Ricky Stenhouse Sr. getting in there, and Kyle Busch landed a punch on him.
So dad came in to protect his son or something like that.
At this point, Ricky Stenhouse is like 34, and his dad's like in his 50s or 60s. And then as Ricky Jr. is getting pulled away, he's like, "Dad, stop. Will someone get my dad?" He's like, He's like, he knows his dad's just too old for this. Like, he's like, what is he doing? And then there's just a scuffle between crew members at that
Yeah.
point. And there's this one Kyle Busch guy that was just throwing people off of the little platform of where the
That little
hauler is.
ramp thing, yeah.
Yeah. And then there's another Ricky Stenhouse Jr. crew member that would just he got stuck in the dividers for like a solid minute.
Dude, everyone talks about like hockey fights and that. We need more NASCAR fights. That was cinema.
There was like a couple tires just sitting there. People were just falling over tires.
Io fell over one of the tires, like almost immediately, tripped over a tire, fell down. It's so unserious.
Yeah, you had the NASCAR head of security guard, Vic. He's the bald African American guy that always breaks up fights. It was, I think, last year at Charlotte there was something that he didn't break up anything. He was just there. He was ready. And then he was the guy in the Noah Gragson Ross Chastain fight that just dragged Noah Gragson away from the fight.
How is he always there on time for a fight?
That's what happens. That's what happens when you're the head of security. You're just
ready. You're just ready.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, got to secure.
It's just the job description. You just got to be in.
Okay. And then Kyle. And here's the thing: Ricky Stenhouse Jr. would have left if the track had tunnels, but he had to stay. There was nowhere he could go, so he was just sulking for 198 laps. And when you get all that anger for 198 laps of getting took out like that, you're going to be angry. And then after the fight, Stenhouse yelled at him, "I'll wreck you at Charlotte." And Kyle Busch said, "I don't give a F. I suck just as bad as you," which is saying something.
That makes you feel really bad for my pick later. Spoiler alert.
Go ahead, Rome.
I'm just trying to sit here listening to this banner between this Ricky Stenhouse and Kyle Busch dude trying to fight. I'm like, NASCAR got to be the dumbest sport of all time. Because why are you just out here fighting on the side of a track after you just race? Like,
I gotta hear Andrew's response.
The math doesn't math for me. It just doesn't. I maybe you guys know like about this lingo more than I do, but it's just like what's the point of it all? It doesn't make any remote sense to me why you would just fight on the side of a track like that. I don't. It's wild to me. It's just wild to me.
I don't know why they fight. It's just bent up anger. When you get very angry at someone.
Yeah, but like Formula One guys don't fight like that though. They don't fight after a race. At least they keep it civil. Like relax.
They don't.
Not anymore.
Not anymore.
They don't like punch each other. They yell at each other, but they don't like throw hands. Like these guys throw hands like
back in the day they would.
Yeah, but that's when they were like out here just putting their bodies on the line. These guys are fine now. Like it's cool now. It's cool now.
I guess it kind of relates back to the American way of doing things.
America.
Fair. That's also very fair. Just trying to throw hands to solve problems. I guess that's probably the quote unquote best way to solve a problem.
If you go into the dirt track scene, which is not something I'm necessarily all that familiar with, there is a lot more fights, or even the short track scene. There's a lot more fights and a lot more anger that goes on.
Wild.
And so NASCAR is relatively civil compared to those. But
relatively civil.
It's all relative.
Yeah.
But I think we can move on to the news here.
Yeah, let's move on to the news.
And now for the news.
As I'm on the wrong document. But anyway, North Wilkesboro keeping the All-Star race for 2025. And
what are your thoughts on the All-Star race in general? Like, keep it, lose it? Because for me, I like the idea of it, but like, I don't know. I don't know.
Here's what my thoughts about the All-Star race. I want to see it move from North Wilkesboro because I want to see North Wilkesboro have a regular race day. I think that would be better. With that being said, I don't like the fact that we have two exhibition races in NASCAR. It's just
like one
one's enough.
Yeah.
And with NASCAR probably leaving the LA Coliseum next year, I think the All-Star race is the better one to drop, but I don't know. Because for a long time, it was the Clash was at Daytona as a hype race with all the pole winners, and now it's gone from an anyone can get in race at the Coliseum, and now you have the All-Star race, which was often it was this week, but at Charlotte, just to give teams another quick race that anyone can qualify. I feel that the two used to be completely separate things, and now they kind of they're too similar. If we're going to keep two, we need to make them be two different fruits in a basket instead of two different types of apples. You need an apple and an orange.
I love the sayings, Andrew. I love the analogies.
A couple of other events were named for the 2025 schedule. Atlanta was moved to the summer, which for the in-season tournament, I don't really have anything to feel about it. A couple other race days that were not really notable. But NASCAR finale staying at Phoenix for 2025. I'm a happy camper. Ethan and I are both happy campers. Rest of the NASCAR fans not happy with it. They don't like Phoenix. I've been saying this is that NASCAR TV, the TV directors from Fox and NBC, they don't know how to direct Phoenix as well as some of the other tracks because there's racing there. They just don't show it, which is kind of an issue. And I will say the track isn't the best track, but it's overhated.
Yeah.
Very much so. I like it.
I got to get out there this year.
Yeah. And then the final bit of NASCAR moves. The Money Team Racing, which was formerly owned by Floyd Mayweather, rebrands to Team Amerivet, fielding number 50 Chevrolet for Ty Dillon and the Coke 600 this weekend. Talk about things you didn't expect to see. Just things that are irrelevant and kind of irrelevant, really. We'll see how it goes. They'll probably still run 38th. That doesn't change anything.
Yeah.
New owner replacing an old one. Garbage driver, but who knows? Maybe they can be a lapped car and pull some shenanigans off for some reason.
Shenanigans, man.
Moving over to F1.
Yeah.
Alexander Albon signs a multi-year contract extension to stay at Williams to at least 2026. We know that for sure.
Yeah. I don't remember if it was my official prediction back when we had the 2025 grid prediction little special segment. I don't remember if it was my official prediction that Albon was going to go to Mercedes or if I just said that I could see it happen. I don't know. I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm a little surprised that he extended with Williams this early into the silly season, because depending on what happens with Sainz, that Mercedes seat could still be open. So Albon, I don't know. I don't know if it just wasn't in the cards, if they just straight up told him we're not really looking at you, but I don't know. What's your thoughts on it, Rome?
I mean, like I mentioned briefly before in my inlet description, I felt like if this happened last season, he would probably get into a Big 3 team because he was performing out of his mind. If you look at what he did in Canada last year, he got, I think it was a P8 or P10, somewhere around that range. He was phenomenal in that race, and I think he wanted to try and replicate that coming into this year, but it's the car, the strategy that just hasn't really helped him out that well.
It hasn't been the same year for him.
Yeah, exactly. And I think even with the pit stop in Imola, with the loose right tire, front right tire, that kind of messed him over, and that was a team problem. So I think really, as I'm talking myself into it, the team really kind of mess them up for a chance to probably get into a big 3 team by next year, because I still think he has talent to do it. It's just he
I
hasn't
agree with
gotten the
you.
right machinery to do it, and it's unlucky for him. But I think, you know, as long as he trusts what Williams are bringing to the table, and this is just like a blimp in the road, then that's fine. Like, I'm
Yeah.
cool with that. But it's just a rough start. I think it'll take some time for them to get upgrades in and try and come back to where they were at one point. But I think it really shouldn't be a problem, because, like, again, there's 24 races in a season.
Yeah.
Like, I said this about McLaren last year when they were like P17, P19, and Q1s consistently throughout the first 3 races. I'm like, this is a long season. They got upgrades. They're going to perform well, and they did towards the end of the second half of the year. So I don't know if Williams is going to go on that improvement level as McLaren, obviously, but
Probably not,
I
just because
think
they don't have the resources.
yeah, they
but
don't.
They can
'Cause
improve though. They can become a more consistent midfield team.
Yeah, I think that's what their ceiling is like a P6, P7, where like V Carb's at right now. Like that's where I can see this team being at, and that's if Albon puts in those back half of the top 10 performances where he's in like P8, P9, P10. But that's like an ideal world. I just think right now his best performance is probably around P11 through P13 right now, and that's just because of the car. That's not all his fault though.
Yeah, and I mean, I think he probably did see the writing on the wall somewhat, or his management team or whoever is helping him in this decision, because any other move, because he wasn't going to go back to Red Bull. That was never going to happen in a million years.
No.
The only other positive move could have been Mercedes. Every other potential move is just a lateral move. And then at that point, why not stay with what you're familiar with?
Fair. That's also a very fair point. Because like, at that point, like Ferrari was locked up when Hamilton got there. Like we were going towards back half of this last season. Like Ferrari still kind of had an open seat, because like we don't know if Leclerc and Sainz were going to stick around for one more year. And we are like, oh, maybe Albon or Ferrari could be thrown in there somehow. But once Lewis was going to go there, it was kind of just like that's kind of it in terms of filling them. But like you said, the only spot really was Red Bull, but they're probably sticking to their Red Bull like pipeline, I guess, to try and fill that second seat. So it just wasn't really in the cards for that. But I think it's just the dominoes didn't fall where they may and didn't go his way. And I think he had no choice really, which kind of sucked, honestly, because he has the talent to be a top tier driver and a top tier team. But it is what it is at the end of the day. And that's just kind of how the cookie crumbles.
I wonder if, because I still think, and I'm remembering now, Sainz was my official prediction to go to Mercedes, and I still think he will go to Mercedes. But if he does go to Audi, like has been rumored, then I wonder if Mercedes will regret letting a driver like Albon go off the board to Williams, or to stay at Williams, I should say. I wonder if that'll be a regret later down the line.
Yeah, that's probably the biggest question. But I think, to your point too, I think we'll talk about him later when we talk about F2, but Kimi Antonelli is right on the doorstep. Like he's still trying to figure out his FIA super license thing. He's not even 18 yet, so that's probably like a whole nother discussion. But like once he gets his super license, like he's been top on Toto's list. Lewis mentioned in a quote today that like if there was anybody that was going to replace him, it was Kimi Antonelli. So when you got the GOAT's side on the situation, like you're top of the top in terms of Toto's mindset right now. And I think he has to try and figure out other options, you know?
Yeah. I mean, Kimi hasn't really had too much success so far in F2. Not that he's had a bad campaign, but just not an amazing campaign quite yet. And I don't think that thrusting him into a Mercedes right away is the smart move. I don't think it's the right move for his career. I mean, Max Verstappen basically did that with Red Bull, but even still not quite. And also, for as good as Kimi might be, he's not Max Verstappen. No. And I think I hope Mercedes doesn't move Kimi. Like, he could use another year in F2 or a year at Williams, because I understand, like, youth in itself is, in a way, a skill set in the eyes of Formula One teams. They're going to be there they potentially could be there for a long time, more time to develop under or in that like specific program of an F1 team. So I understand all that, but just don't do it, Mercedes. Just don't do it. And sure, he's getting praise from everyone. Like there is something about him for sure, but I think just don't rush him, because that could be a huge mistake.
Yeah, we've seen it in way too many sports now where you rush young guys coming into like even the American sports too, when you see these guys kind of get rushed into these like high profile situations, like Justin Fields, for example, he felt the pressure of the Chicago Bears, and we all know how that situation was because he went to the Steelers, and that whole situation just wasn't worked out because he wasn't in the best system. So we can make all those analogies we want to, but that's just the fact is a fact.
Yeah.
So
yeah, the big winner here is Williams. They've got
It really is.
stability with a solid driver for next 2 years, maybe more. That's a great thing for Williams. And I've been hearing, I've been seeing things that could indicate a lot of things with that other Williams seat, which we'll talk about later. And going into the next piece of news, Kevin Magnussen urges F1 to learn from U.S. style of racing and racetracks. This was a Racer article here. This is what he said. The best thing would be for the FIA to tell us to give back positions. The consequence for not doing that being harsh, like really harsh. You make sure that make sure that's being done. He's talking about the grid penalties and things.
Mm-hmm.
I firstly think it gets too complicated and also too big of a consequence. You have to be able to leave a bit of room to go over the limit and come back from that. Whereas now they judge it to be an unfair advantage and it's a drive-through penalty. I think that's not good.
Well, okay. I don't think he's necessarily wrong. I also think that is coming from Kevin Magnussen. That's not the voice that can give this message to the F1 community and to the FIA just because of his reputation right now. Like, right message, wrong messenger type situation. Like, I don't think he's necessarily wrong. Like, it's Kevin Magnussen. Like, him pushing the limits is like really pushing the limits already. Like, I agree with him. Like, you take a situation like Sainz and Piastri in Miami. Like, they both went a little bit over the limit, and Sainz did end up getting a penalty, but only because he clipped and took off Piastri's wing. Like, if he didn't hit the wing, I think that's a good example of going a little bit over the limit and not necessarily being punished for it. But Kevin Magnussen, who goes over the limit and then some, you see what I mean? Like, that's
I get where you're coming from.
Yeah.
I do like what IndyCar has is if it's a severe enough penalty, it's a drive-through, but more often it's let a certain number of guys go.
One thing that Magnussen is 110% right about, that it doesn't really matter who says it. It just needs the FIA and Formula One just need to do it. Let the drivers know about giving the position back right away. Like, it does. It's like the MLB replay thing for any baseball fans out there listening to this. It doesn't need to take 10 minutes to figure out if a call is correct or not. Review it quickly and then relay that information. The FAA does not need to be looking at these incidents for so long that by the time they come up with a verdict, the driver can't give the position back or something like that. Like, it's obviously not going to be instantaneous. It's going to need to take a little bit, but it doesn't need to take as long as they let it. I don't know. Rome, what do you think?
Yeah, to your point about that, it's like I completely understand where you're coming from, but about reviews needing to be quick. Like, the same thing goes for the MLB as is for the FIA. You don't want to rush those situations. You can't rush them because if you rush them, you make a bad judgment. You can't go back on it, and then you make the call, and then it just turns into a Michael Massey situation where you can't figure it out in the right time in the right space. So, like, that's I understand where you're coming from, where it needs to be like the message needs to be fast, and you need to, like, before it gets all like egotistical and very like, oh, I didn't get the place back on time. This guy already went ahead of me. This and the third. I understand where you're coming from in that spot, but it's like you kind of. I don't really give them the benefit of the doubt that often, but like you got to give the FIA the benefit of the doubt in that scenario because it's like they have the whole meticulous process that we don't know about that we obviously know in our minds now, but like there's a specific process to how they review things, and that's how it gets conveyed to drivers and whatever that us fans don't really know about, but we know.
You're definitely right, but I still think that the process can be a little bit quicker. Like there's got to be some middle ground there. If not, then I mean, keep doing what you're doing. Like you said, you can't go too fast that you're making the wrong decision. But I mean, I don't know. I think that the process can be sped up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe I'm wrong. Like you said, we don't exactly have an inside look.
Yeah, exactly.
Another thing about this is that with the penalty points is they made the system I wouldn't say, I don't know how long ago, but before the F1 calendar expanded to 24 races, which it's interesting. Should the FIA expand it to have something closer to the number of penalty points before you a race ban, before
maybe not. I mean, it's K-Mag is really the only one pushing the issue, to be honest. Everyone else is in the spot where they don't exactly need to be super concerned yet about their penalty points. Sure, bump it up to 14 or whatever, because the season is that much longer now, but I don't think it's something that really needs to be addressed when really only one driver is pushing up to that limit. And even if the limit went up from like 12 points to 14, 15, whatever, that's just more races where Magnussen's going to be doing something crazy like in Miami, which is fun to see in a way, but also like not right, I guess. Like there's a certain rule set that you follow in F1 and agree with it or don't. It's what everyone follows and is supposed to follow. And then when there's a guy that breaks it to his advantage, why would we give him more opportunities to bend the rules in his advantage?
I wouldn't do it this season. It's something that the FIA would. I think the FIA should look at in the off season, discuss, and then make a decision.
Sure. Yeah. Moving on to the.
Well, hold on here. I want to talk about what he said about the racetracks. He said, "I like the rougher tracks. I prefer those. But the racing issue, you have tracks that have grass or gravel on the outside. You put this natural limit and that and that sorts itself out. I feel that's also an issue in Formula One, just the tracks in general. Ethan and I have talked about this extensively on the podcast, but
I agree with him.
We both think that throw grass, throw gravel on these tracks. Let's not have a bunch of
there's times where you need
area.
There's times where you need a legitimate runoff because you would be going into the gravel or the grass at too high of a rate of speed. But for the most part, like at Imola, there's so many gravel traps and grass and things like that punish the driver for going off the track. And we see it works in Imola. Like the drivers stay on the track for the most part. And when you go off the track, make a mistake, you get punished for it. And when you're an elite driver in the world, it makes sense to be punished for making a mistake. So I do like where Magnussen's mind is coming from there. As much as possible, I would prefer to see grass and gravel over concrete runoffs. I know that's not always possible, but as much as possible, it is nice to see. It for a track like Miami, though, which is what I assume he's mostly referencing to, because that's where most of the controversy about him both ways has come from. A circuit like that is literally in a parking lot, like you can't exactly have grass and gravel. But for the more permanent circuits, like Coda has a good bit of grass, but there's also huge swaths of concrete runoff that could be lessened, and then you add in more gravel or grass or whatever. Or I know Formula One doesn't race there anymore, but Paul Ricard, that circuit was insane. It was concrete asphalt for as far as the eye could see. Like you could not I mean, because you would get a penalty, of course, but like you would physically be able to just drive in such a way that like what's even the point of the racetrack?
Right. And I also think like another thing to mention here when it comes to these tracks, it's like the gravel, like if you saw in Imola when Checo Perez got kind of locked up, the gravel kind of slowed him down a little bit and it kind of stopped his momentum. And like, yeah, you see multiple times where like people end their races because the gravel kind of gets the engine and that's kind of it. But it mostly, it's actually might be a little bit safer than like if you're crash on somebody and you try and go off into the little concrete runoffs, it slips you into those barriers where you get those like hard impacts on the wall. Like if you're just locked up and you're trying to slow down with the gravel and how steep it is, like that'll try and help slow you down and not have you end your race just go on a slip and slide over these concrete runoffs.
Yeah.
So the safety part is also a big thing in this as well.
Yeah.
All right.
Now moving on.
Yeah, moving on now.
All right, now moving
to Bottas Williams rumors. Ethan, you put this in there.
I know you don't really like talking about rumors too much, Andrew. You prefer to stick to the hard facts. I respect that. However, it is a hard fact that Valtteri Bottas was in the Williams hospitality at Imola this weekend. Was he just meeting up with old friend James Vowles, or were they discussing something? Because it's not exactly certain and probably leaning more towards no when it comes to a future for Valtteri at Kick Sauber, which will, of course, become Audi. Doesn't really seem like there's a future there. Valtteri, of course, has the relationship not only with James Vowles from his time at Mercedes, but let's remember, Bottas was a Williams driver before he was a Mercedes driver. There's multiple connections there. If Valtteri wants to continue his Formula One career, there's not exactly a lot of options for him, with Williams most likely being the seemingly most logical landing spot for both team and driver, because experienced driver, not going to make too many mistakes. Williams they already have Albon, but if they can get another driver like that, I mean, it's either a driver like Bottas, another veteran with experience, or you just go all the way with the youth with Kimi Antonelli. I don't really think there's a middle ground there. So Bottas, he fills that one end of the spectrum there. And for Bottas, like I said, if he wants to remain in F1, there's not a lot of options besides Williams. So the fact that you see them meeting, it's something to keep an eye out for sure.
Yeah, I saw a Chris Medline article today where he mentioned about 8 different names possibly going to Williams.
Yeah,
including those 2. I saw Drugovich. I saw the 2 Alpine drivers. I think I did not see Zhou. He trying to think of others, but that article was a good read. A lot of interesting things that could happen. A lot of people that could wind up with Williams, and the F1 silly season could have anything and everything. He even said Verstappen to Mercedes, possibly.
Yeah, that's not happening.
So, a lot of things can happen. We'll see.
Yeah. And then next bit up in the rumor mill, Swiss German news outlet. They're called Blick. They're reporting that not only is Carlos Sainz the favorite for Sauber / Audi, whatever you want to call them, which of course
Audi.
No. But of course he's the favorite, but Esteban Ocon, Pierre Gasly, Yuki Tsunoda, and Felipe Drugovich are seen as the plan Bs for Sainz not signing with them. So for me, that's really interesting in a few ways. One, Teo Porcher, who long time, not even a Sauber junior, but like a Sauber wonder kid. He's not listed there. And I know he's with McLaren and IndyCar now, but this was a guy who looked like he would be in F1 110% by this point, or at least next year. And now it doesn't really seem like that's even likely anymore, like possible or likely. And then also Zane Maloney, the current F2 championship leader, he is also a Sauber junior. And again, like we don't know the validity of this report, but it is a Swiss German newspaper reporting it. They probably have more of a knowledge of the team's inner workings than most. The fact that, according to them, Zane Maloney and Teo Porcher aren't linked is super interesting to me, because I would think you already have that Nico Hulkenberg, that veteran driver with experience. He'll be able to help develop the car. And if you don't get Carlos Sainz, who of course is the big fish, then I thought they would for sure go youth movement. You know, whether it be Zane Maloney or Teo Porcher, two really young and exciting and talented drivers. And instead, they're looking for, of course, you know, Felipe Drugovich. He's young and talented as well. But why Drugovich over Porcher or Maloney? Because in my opinion, both of those guys are more talented than Drugovich. No slight to Drugovich, but it took Drugovich a really long time to win that championship. He's older than both of them. And then, you know, Ocon, Gasly, Tsunoda, all make sense, sure. But why not go the youth movement after already filling that veteran seat? It's something to keep an eye out for, because this is of course not set in stone, but I guess now it's just, don't be surprised if it is a guy like Felipe Drugovich being announced in that second Sauber seat. Whereas before, if I wasn't aware of this report, I would be extremely surprised. I don't agree with it. I don't know. It doesn't make any sense to me, quite frankly.
Porcher and Drugovich actually took him 3 years each to get to the Formula 2 championship.
Yeah, but Porcher's younger.
Yeah.
Which
That is true.
It counts for something.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. And Zane Maloney, he's killing it right now.
You can say it's insane.
One could say that. One probably shouldn't say that, but one could say that.
We got our first pun on the pod today. All right, let's get it.
I don't know if you guys saw, but McLaren reveals a Senna tribute livery for Monaco. Rome, you're giving the chef's kiss.
And it's rightly deserved. It's just it looks so pretty. Like they couldn't have done a better job. I mean, to be fair though, like the way they shot it, it looked like so bright and so pretty. I was like, oh yeah, they killed this. But when you I saw like other pictures of like on a white background, and it doesn't look as pleasing. But like I think on track, especially, it'll look like really really nice. I'm really excited for why they did that. And I think just based off of like what they did in like Monaco too, and just like paying tribute to Ayrton Senna in that way, it's really cool to see. And I'm glad McLaren's kind of taking this step. And I saw this like IG reel from the Red Flag Spot. I'm not sure if you guys have heard of them before, but they're like big American frat boy F1 podcast basically. And one of the guys were like, oh, like I'm so glad that McLaren is going all in, not with all this like cheeky, like we got to stay bright, we got to stay papaya, we got to stay red with Ferrari, we got to stay this color, that color. They just went all in with it. And I think in terms of how like McLaren is engineered in terms of being that flashy team that goes rogue for some of these designs, it's really cool to see. And I'm glad they did that touch. And I think the Senna estate and family should be very proud and honored to be a part of the McLaren family, because that's just what it is at the end of the day. So, and it's not, I'm not gassing up just because I'm wearing this Lando Norris shirt and I have the McLaren hat next to me. So that's also
a lot of people online have really been loving the livery. So it definitely is not just you. For me, like you kind of said, there's some pictures where it looks really weird, and then some pictures where it looks absolutely amazing. I agree with you. I think it'll look really good on track. But yeah, some pictures just kind of weird, but the sentiment and the execution, like when you see a picture of it like in good lighting, it looks really nice. It's an amazing tribute. It's a great sentiment. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. For me, I'm just gonna say, gives me Australia vibes.
Yeah, it does a little bit, but
And
I can see that. I mean, it's supposed to be Brazil vibes.
yeah,
Yeah, it is supposed to be Brazil. It's the same color scheme though, but it's supposed
yeah,
to be
it
Brazil.
is.
So,
Yeah.
so.
But
I
for
do
me,
see what you mean with Australia vibes, though. Now I kind of can't unsee it.
sorry for ruining it. But
No,
for
you're
me,
good.
we'll see.
Very Australia World Cup.
The jury's still out. I'll see what it looks like on track
Yeah.
because I don't know what I don't know.
I'm kind of with you. Like it looks really nice in some pictures, but then now I'm looking at some other pictures in bad lighting. I should just probably stop looking at pictures of it in bad lighting.
Yeah.
Why?
Don't, yeah,
why are
don't,
you?
don't try and stain your image of a pretty looking car like that. Like let's just get it on track. Let's just move on with our day.
Yeah. Let's do that. All right. Last little bit. Well, second to last bit of F1 news. Pat Simons, who is the Formula One Chief Technical Officer, and he was a former member of Benetton and Renault when Michael Schumacher was winning for Benetton and when Fernando Alonso was winning for Renault. So, I mean, that already says huge Formula One mind, like the knowledge of that guy, the experience of that guy.
Mm-hmm.
Not many people can match that. He was hired by Andretti as an engineering consultant is going to be his official title. So probably not a member of the day-to-day operations, but as a consultant, you can't really do much better. Makes sense for both parties. Pat Simons, he's getting up there in age. I believe he's 70 years old. So he probably doesn't want that day-to-day job anymore. I mean, chief technical officer of Formula One, like he's been working on the 2026 regulations. He's been working on everything the past few years. Like that's a pretty massive job. So he's taking a step back, but he's still going to be in the world of F1. And it's interesting that he went to Andretti, a team that isn't even in F1. I mean, that just shows the dedication of Andretti to get into F1. And I absolutely love to see that, both as an American F1 fan and just as an F1 fan in general.
Yeah, I think another point to Andretti too, kind of slightly off topic, but not entirely. Have you guys talked about like the whole like Andretti and the U.S. senators trying to figure out the whole antitrust laws thing? Like
Absolutely.
they're trying to call on Biden to investigate this now. Like this is very interesting now to see how this is going to play out, and we'll see if F1 kind of gets penalized for it or if there's some like antitrust laws that kind of come down from it, but. I just thought like at first it was kind of a leverage play from the Congress to be like, hey, like you're taking a piece out of American culture. You're not really doing this the right way, and just having the Andretti try and call on them to try and please F1 again. But once you start looking a little bit deeper to it, then it's like, okay, then there actually might be something here. Not entirely, but we'll see what comes of it.
It's very interesting how this is working out. I mean, Liberty Media, the company that owns F1, an American company. So that's where all of this is really, I think that is kind of what's lit the fire for all of this. It is an interesting situation that we will keep monitoring on our podcast in Rome. I'm sure on your podcast as well, because it really is interesting. And Andretti, I mean, this move and the other moves they've made, I mean, their factory in the UK, everything they've done, it all shows that they are so ready to enter the world of Formula One. And I hope it happens.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then, Rome, I know you got a couple of quotes and some discussions on that potentially.
Yeah. So I came across these quotes like somewhat last night, and I wanted to bring this into this episode today. First quote I'll bring up is from Checo Perez, kind of similar to what K-Mac said, but not entirely. He just plain out said, "quote This track is not made for F1 in terms of racing."
Yeah.
I just wanted to get your thoughts on it because I think it's. I'll say my opinion first. I think it's just like I agree with what he's saying in terms of like Imola's super narrow, and when you go into those final turns,
Yeah.
you see all those cars bump over that yellow bar, and it just kind of got shaky, and you don't really see that from a lot of tracks. It's just because of Imola, how narrow it is. But like, it's also a him problem too because he knows how to race in those conditions. Like you won
Yeah.
in Singapore, you won in Monaco, you know how to win in those narrow street circuits. Like
Yeah.
Monaco Street is as wide as a mouse sometimes, and I'm surprised that these big F1 cars can fit in them now. Like it's also a him problem because I mean, if you guys were to listen to the podcast like about a couple years ago, I was like one of the biggest Checo fans because I was like he has the cojones to win those street races and be like, dude, I'm that guy now. Like I can contend with Max Verstappen, go step for step with him, and win these races in those tight circuits. And looking with Singapore, he did in 2022 in the rain. There was like so many DNFs, so many disqualifications. He still won that race. And then Monaco as well. Like Monaco is one of the trickiest tracks on the calendar, if not the trickiest. So
Yeah.
it's also a him problem because he knows how to race on that. That's his IQ, and it's almost like he left that to the curb now. So it's kind of for me, it's kind of 50-50 on it, but I wanted to let you guys have the floor on this one. I'm curious to hear what you guys think.
Well, yeah, I do think that, Checo, he's definitely lost confidence. That's the main thing. He's lost confidence. And going up against Max Verstappen, it's tricky no matter what, because first of all, that car, it's always going to be built for Max. So Sergio's driving style, which is different from Max, he's going to struggle more in that car. And then just the confidence drain, that's got to be tough. But like you said, it still is kind of a him problem. Like, you got to work through those things. And he has shown that he can perform on tight and narrow circuits. But he's also not completely wrong. Imola is a tough track for Formula One these days. There can be, you don't want to change too much because it's such a historic circuit. But there are changes that could be looked at. I'm not a racetrack designer. I don't really know exactly what.
Of course.
But there are things that should maybe be looked at to promote closer racing. You don't have to commit to making any changes, but at least look into it. So
Yeah.
I don't think he's completely wrong there. It might be a little bit of what I was saying about K-Mag. Right message, wrong messenger.
Yeah, 100%.
And I did want to mention this about Monaco since we are going to be talking more about it later, and we kind of brought it up now. Yeah, Monaco, man, it's so tight. Like, you can't get it off the F1 calendar just because it is the F1 race. But, man, it is tough. Like, it's a tough watch, honestly, the Monaco Grand Prix. Like, it's a tough watch just because there's no wheel-to-wheel racing. Like, you probably know who's winning after – not even you probably know who's winning. You probably know the entire finishing order, give or take a couple of places based off of qualifying. So
100%.
it is really tough. He is completely right in that sense. But we have seen passing at Imola in the past. I mean, he made passes at Imola this year as well. You can do it. It is harder. These cars, this current regulation, it doesn't promote close racing as much as we thought it would going from the last regulation change. So there's multiple factors here. It's a lot, in my opinion. It's a question that's a lot harder to answer than the more you go into it, the harder it is to answer.
Right.
Everyone is kind of right, at least a little bit.
100%.
Yeah. Perez last 3 races, 3rd, 4th, and 8th, not where you want to be.
No.
Yeah.
Especially with the upgraded McLaren, the upgraded Ferrari. Sergio has to be there. He has to be there or thereabouts. He can't be third. That's fine. Finish third. But when you start falling down to eighth, dude, what are you doing? You can't get eliminated in Q1. And I think that, or Q2, sorry. And I think that's the biggest thing, especially at a track like Imola. That's going to ruin his race. Sergio can fight through the field. We've seen that. But you can only go so far when the competition ahead of you is now that much better. He's not going to be able to fight all the way through the field again. He's going to have more trouble in qualifying. He needs to step up his game. And I think with his confidence, I think his confidence is just so shot right now. I think that's going to be really tricky for him.
Yeah, and then the other quote I wanted to bring in, Andrew, were you going to say anything about the Checo stuff? Okay, cool.
No, go right ahead.
All right, cool. So the other quote I was going to bring in here was what Charles Leclerc said. He mentioned something very interesting to me. I didn't touch on this on my podcast, so I wanted to bring this to you guys. He said, quote, "We lost everything in the straights, and they were doing something weird with the energy engine-wise. McLaren and Red Bull. We'll look into that, and once we fix that, I think we've got a real shot of going back to the top step of the podium." That to me is very interesting because if you can point something out like that to where like they were conserving energy somehow or conserving the DRS systems, then it seems like Ferrari can look at that and go, okay, how can we try and replicate that? Because it's also just a simple fact of like, as soon as you see your competitors ahead of you do something weird that you can look at and be like, okay, how can we do that? It's just that simple. Like, we want to get the leg up on the competitors. So that's just kind of where he's coming from. And that's just kind of natural with F1. But I think it's also a big thing of like, you're seeing this 3-horse race now between Red Bull, McLaren, and Ferrari, and at least this first half of the year. And you look at it and go, okay, like Ferrari's been on the back foot of this Red Bull McLaren battle the past couple Grand Prix. What will they be able to bring to Monaco this week that puts them at least a little bit in the thick of it with Red Bull McLaren and not so much on the back foot? And I think that's what they have to look at this week before they travel to Monaco in a couple days. So I don't know. It's very interesting to see what that comes with. But then again, I just wanted to give you guys the floor on that and give you guys your opinion on it.
It'll be interesting to see how fast they can make that fix. But the fact that they already know what they need to be looking at, like you said, that's huge. Whether they're ready in time for Monaco or not, who knows? It's also not the hugest deal for Monaco. Of course, there's the start-finish line straight, and then you have the tunnel. But it's not like a Monza or anything. So you don't need to have that figured out by, in the next 72 hours or whatever before you transport the car. But yeah, the sooner the better. And the fact that they already know the issue, that's great for them. And it's great for the fans as well, because the more competition, the more exciting the races are, the better and happier everyone is. So, yeah. Andrew, you got anything to say about that, or do you want to go on to the IndyCar news before we do some quick previews? Because this episode has been quite long.
Yeah. IndyCar scheduled its charter presentation for this week. We've heard about what it may or may not be. The whole sounds like that they will have not locked in spots for the Indy 500, which is a good thing, which is because we saw the interesting bump day of last Sunday, and we've seen it in the past many times. Don't get rid of it, please. That's the one thing that's great about that's one of the great things about IndyCar is bump day for the Indy 500.
Yeah.
You can see anyone going home.
Mm-hmm.
Can be the defending winner. That's happened before. Could be some scrub.
Yeah.
You never know. It's always interesting.
All right.
Now into the previews.
And now for next week's race previews.
All right. Just making this super quick, and then we'll get into the pick point picks. Literally just Monaco. It's the crown jewel of Formula One. Everyone knows that. But like I said earlier, super hard to pass there. Qualifying is going to figure it out. McLaren, they've been on the up and up the past few races. I don't think they're going to be quite there this weekend. They're more of a medium to high speed type of car right now. Whereas at Monaco, you have a lot more of those slower corners. Sergio Perez, this needs to be a confidence boost for him. It has the potential to be a confidence boost for him. He has had success around Monaco. He has success at that types of circuits. He needs to do good there. For Ferrari, Charles, he can do good there, but he's also just absolutely cursed in his home country. So we'll see how that plays out. And I think the easy pick to win is Max, but we'll get into all that later on. But yeah, McLaren might struggle a little bit more than usual. I think that's the biggest thing you need to know going into the race weekend.
Okay. Also, like another thing, like from my point of view as well, if I may, like
for sure,
like I mentioned before about this 3-horse race, it's like I think this is probably the most important race of the year for all three of these teams, because to me, at this point in the year, we saw this. I think it was in like 2022 where it was Red Bull and Ferrari. They were kind of back and forth in constructors for most of the year, and then it was Monaco where Leclerc had that horrific pit stop issue where he went from P1 to P4, and that kind of ruined the season for them for there. So I think, again, at this Monaco race, all three teams have to be locked in, focused from every part, every angle for these teams to be successful. And I think the drivers have to act the same way too. I think this race will be a big predictor in terms of where each of these three teams are at right now, because I think I actually disagree with your point, Ethan. I think that Red Bull and McLaren are probably the top two teams right now in terms of race pace and in terms of
I agree. Right, when you have on the average track, I agree. It's just for Monaco, I don't think McLaren.
Yeah, there could be some difference there, but I think it still depends on what qualifying looks like, because qualifying basically determines the race. We all know that. So that's another big thing there. And then, we'll, like I mentioned about Ferrari, like how does Sainz and Leclerc try and put themselves in that fight and try and put themselves in that situation? Because the the driver's standings say that, Leclerc's in P2 behind Max, so that he's in a fight with Max. It's not the case at all, because if you look on track, McLaren is by far the better team, and he's just got points because he just quietly got in there and got a couple points in there. So it's really just a fact of how each of these three teams will try and figure something out and try and put together the best strategy. And whoever wins that kind of wins this race and kind of wins the next like 5 or 6 at this point, because it's a big launching pad for where the rest of the season is going to go for all three of these teams.
IndyCar, Andrew?
Yeah,
Indy 500.
Indy 500, the greatest spectacle in racing.
Trademarked.
Just some your lone Indy 500 entries. You've got Marco Andretti, and the Andretti Herta with Marco and Curb Agajanian entry. That's my favorite name of all time. It used to be Andretti Herta with Andretti. They now named it Marco because got to differentiate.
I thought the best name in sports was General Booty. I thought that was the one, or if it was Jake Butt or something, I don't
know. Anyway, Kyle Larson in the Aero McLaren Hendrick, Callum Ilott, his teammate in the regular Aero McLaren. If Kyle Larson has to leave, the rumor is Tony Kanaan will take over, and he may do a veteran refresher test on Thursday. Look out for that as possible. The 15, Catherine Legge, we talked about her a little bit. 20, Ryan Reinbold, their teams with Cusick, Ryan Hunter-Reay, and Connor Daly. You have Christian Rasmussen over to the third car for this race. Ed Carpenter in the 20 this week. You've got the drive for 5, Elio Castroneves with Shank. You have Sato coming in with RLL. I'm going to give you a handful of drivers to look out for. Look out for Santino Ferrucci, always great at this speedway. I also like Alexander Rossi's pace. Pato Ward is always good. Don't sleep on Kyle Larson either. If there's anyone to come out from Ganassi, it's going to be Pillow. Ganassi's had a good run the past 3, 4, 5 years. They look to be off this year, but if anyone's going to break that, it's going to be Pillow. Don't sleep on Rinus VK. He's always great at the speedway. Qualified 7th, which is his worst qualifying there in his history. which is saying something. Don't sleep on Helio Castroneves. He could break the record. 5 Indy 500 wins. That would be the most. Felix Rosenquist always has looked good with McLaren. Now over with Shank. Maybe he can do something there. Only driver from RLL that I think will do well is Sato. Everyone else too far deep in the field. And all three Penske boys, Newgarden, McLaughlin, Power. They're all going to be great. Look for where the cautions fall will indicate how the race goes. And one more thing is that IndyCar race director Kyle Novak has said we are going to do everything that's possible to get the race finished under green. So we'll hopefully not see what we saw last year with the green with 1 lap left.
Yeah.
But a good thing that rule change is that now with the dragon snake of cars weaving to get the air off, you can now, coming off of turn 4, you cannot go below pit road entry. Otherwise, it's a penalty. Just so that we don't have drivers possibly crashing into the pit lane attenuator piece, which we've seen in the past. With all that being said, that's going to be a great race. Always is. Moving into the Charlotte 600.
Real quick. I know we were just talking about the greatest names. Rome, you said General Booty. Andrew, to be honest, I don't even know what you said. But the greatest name in sports history is NASCAR legend Richard Trickle. If you know, you know. Now let's get into Charlotte.
Not Butterbean Queen.
Butterbean Queen's a close second.
Or
That's a good one.
With
Classic.
NASCAR.
Classy and classic.
With NASCAR this week, I'm not going to go over the trucks and Xfinity randos. There's a lot of them this week for some unknown reason. But anyway, Cup, you have Jimmy the Juggernaut Johnson coming in to finish 32nd this week. And the legacy.
The Juggernaut Johnson's crazy.
Yeah. You have Ty Dillon in the 50 car, which I've mentioned before. You also have, I believe, someone in for the 66 MBM Power Source team is racing. It's either Timmy Hill or David Starr. I don't think I don't think they're racing, but you do have NY Racing team with JJ Yaley returning, all-time racing team. MVM, are they returning with Timmy Hill? They are. Yes, they are. The Intimidator, as some call them on the internet. So we're going to get a full field, a full NASCAR field. First one this year since the Daytona 500. With all that said, Kyle Larson will be coming in. Hopefully, we'll see about that. I think that hopefully that won't be an issue. But yeah, moving on to the favorite segment of the week. You've waited over 90 minutes for this, our longest episode of all time.
You're an absolute legend, but you're also insane.
We have the picks.
Yeah.
And now for next week's race picks.
Going over last week, the guests had the best week. Zach, good job. Picking Corey Heim to win. That was correct. Getting 5 points there. And the All-Star race, Denny Hamlin did beat William Byron. That's a point for myself and the guests because we both picked him. Paul Arone was the highest finisher of both was everyone's pick from the sprint and the main race, giving the guests 1 point for the sprint, me 1 point for the main race. Duff won podium. We all got Max. No surprise there. I have a miscalculation in the points because I have Carlos Sainz Jr. on the podium when he was indeed not. So actually, the guest and myself, no, we didn't tie. I can't do math.
Sports journalism major for a reason.
Facts. We're not supposed to do math in here, though. That's the issue.
Ethan and I both had Leclerc on the podium in the wrong position, and Ethan and the guests both had Norris in the wrong position on the podium.
What did I say last week? I said I'm pretty sure my exact words were, I think I'm gonna regret not picking Lando second.
Yeah, and then I had Perez
kinda-
on the podium, and the guests had Carlos Sainz Jr. on the podium. Jeez, that
Yeah.
was a voice crack. And who did not happen. So yeah,
Honestly,
guests are
this week,
20
I
points
don't even know
back.
what I'm doing.
Guests are 20 points back, closest they've been since week 5. We are now in week 17 for reference. I'm 8 back. So yeah. All right.
Let's do
Indy
it.
500. We'll go. Well, all right. Rome, would you like to pick first?
I was actually prepared for F2 and F1 predictions, but if you want me to talk about Indy 500, I can talk about that too if you need me to.
Just pull a name.
All right. Let's go. Joseph Newgarden. He'll win the race. Is Joey Logano in NASCAR or is he Indy 500?
He is in
'Cause I'm
NASCAR.
not-
He's in NASCAR.
NASCAR.
We're just picking the top position for IndyCar. So, Joseph
Okay.
Newgarden, your pick?
Pat O'Ward's in IndyCar.
Yep, he is.
Yeah.
All right, I'll take him P2.
We just go
and then-
P1.
We just go P1.
Okay, P1 I'll go Newgarden.
All right.
P2 I'll go Pat O'Ward. P3 Pelot's in IndyCar
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah,
Or am I
Pelot,
tweaking?
yeah.
Okay, Pelot's in IndyCar. So I'll go. My podium is P1 Newgarden, P2 I just had him, Pat O'Ward and Alex Pelot P3. And just coming up random names again. I don't know nothing about Indy 500, so I'm just gonna throw that out there and hope for the best. Just a shot in the dark.
Well, Rome, you took my Indy 500 winner as well. We are on the same page. We might be
Hey,
pulling
let's
names out of the
go.
dark, but I agree with the Joseph Newgarden pick to win. Andrew, you've been keeping it a secret from me. I tried to get it out of you last night. I really did. I was texting you, Andrew, who are you picking? You didn't put it in the document. Who are you picking? Andrew, who are you picking?
Well, it's there now. I'm picking the Scot from New Zealand. There's 2 of them. Scott McLaughlin, Scotty Mack. Been arguably the best car all weekend.
Yeah.
I think he's fast. The rest of the podium, I'm going to do this too. I'm going to say Santino Ferrucci third.
Mm-hmm.
And who do I want second? Let's go with old Slick Willpower.
I'll do the podium as well. Why not? I'll do McLaughlin second, and then third, Kyle Larson. Book it, Vince.
Oh, that's interesting. Trucks. I don't think there's actually any Cup drivers entered this week, making it a tougher pick.
Just have your dad pick the NASCAR.
All right, I'll have my dad pick NASCAR. Well, I'll update that. On sometime on the account. I'm picking Brett Moffitt. Only his second start this year, but when I looked at his career in the trucks, he was always good at the 1.5-mile cookie cutters.
Yeah.
And this is what it is.
I went with Christian Eckes. I feel like we haven't really talked about this guy at all this year, and he's like quietly winning the championship for trucks.
Mm-hmm.
For Eckes, I mean, he's the champion, so obviously he's at least solid everywhere. But Charlotte is a track that he does quite well at. So, yeah, going with Eckes there.
Yeah. Talk about who you're picking for Xfinity here.
Yeah, Xfinity. I'm also going after, again, not talking about him for a little bit. Talked about him more at the beginning of the season. Austin Hill, championship leader for Xfinity as well. He hasn't had like the most success at Charlotte. Like he's had some success there, but like you just look at the type of tracks that he's good at, you would think that he's going to be good at Charlotte, unless I'm just thinking about it all wrong or missing something. Like I don't see why he wouldn't be good at Charlotte. So I think this year, hoping anyway, this is the year he figures it out fully.
Yeah, I do think he's ran well at Charlotte. But
he has ran well, but not as well as you would think he would.
It's not a super speedway.
No, but like he still does good at
the
1.5 miles.
He's not the dominator like he is.
No, but you know.
I'm going with the Hendrick 17 is like the most cursed car of all time because you've had in its short history a lot of Cup drivers, and Cup drivers win and dominate these Xfinity races, but they haven't yet, which is something that surprises me. So I'm going to, with that being said, I'm taking Chase Elliott in the Hendrick 17 to finally break the curse and win. So yeah, Andy's won the Charlotte in the Cup Series, so yeah, he's kind of good. I'm going with for Charlotte Coke 600s. I think of arguably the most dominating race in history. Yes, I know Jeff Burton led all the laps at Loud in New Hampshire once, but I think that kind of was impressive due to circumstances that I'm not going to get into now. But a very impressive performance from Martin Truex Jr. in 2017. I think he's won it again since. Always good at the 600, Martin Truex Jr.
Yeah. I'm also going with a guy who is always really good in Charlotte, but after hearing his quote where he basically admitted to being washed, I don't know if this is the right pick, but Kyle Busch, I mean, like, he's due, right? Like, he hasn't won in a minute, and he always does really good at Charlotte. I mean, maybe he just is washed, but I think he's gonna. We've talked about this on the podcast. Like, I don't like the guy. I don't like Kyle Busch. I'm not a Kyle Busch fan. But even I believe in him at Charlotte. Like, that's got to count for something, right? Come on, Kyle. Do it for me. Do it for me, man.
Moving over to Monaco, the sprint.
F2 sprint.
All right.
I have. Go ahead, Rome.
Yeah, this is where you bring me back in the conversation. This is what I was prepared for. Okay, so for the sprint race, I was between.
And we just need the winner. I mean, you can do the podium if you want, but we just need the winner of the sprint in the future.
Because I looked at the doc now and I was like, okay, I should do the winner. So I was between a couple names. I was between Fittipaldi and Dennis Hauger, just as another shot in the dark couple names. But I'm gonna go with Fittipaldi. I think he had a very interesting feature race in Imola. It was like very kind of all over the place for a lot of drivers in that race. I watched the highlights. It was kind of wild on all fronts, really. But I think Fittipaldi, if he wants to get some points or get back into that drivers' championship, I think this is the time for him to do it and try and, possibly please some F1 circles around there. But it's not looking like he's gonna. It's not looking like he's gonna get a seat anytime soon. But if you want to just kind of stick in F2, get some points, just continue. We'll get one step closer, and by all means, and I think he'll be able to do that front.
Yeah, I went with Jack Crawford, kind of like Enzo Fittipaldi, a little bit of a left field pick, but Jack Crawford, he's done well in his time at Monaco before. He got a P. Where's my notes at? I believe he got a P3 there last year. I did not write that in my notes. All I put is he's good there. Great notes. So yeah, Jack Crawford, he is good at Monaco. I'm like 98% sure it was a P3 last year. And I don't know if this is really backed up by the data, but to me, in my head, it at least seems like Jack Crawford always does a little bit better in the sprints than the feature race. So, yeah, I've been winning the sprint. Long story short.
Yeah, I'm going to go Zane Maloney, points leader.
Yeah,
Simple.
that's the route I went with the main race, the feature race. Zane Maloney, points leader, is going to win the feature race at Monaco.
I think it's actually going to be Isaac Hajar again. He's won back-to-back feature races, so I mean, I don't see why he's not going to win a third one. He's been on a hot form as of late, so I mean, we've seen a lot of these F2 guys going back-to-back runs a little bit, but not so much like 3 in a rows. So very interesting to see how that will play out.
Yeah, I'm going with the same pick. Stole my reasoning, but yeah, I think it's a good pick, and I think it's going to get us closer to Ethan in the points here.
Maybe, but as you just said, like, doesn't happen a lot. You're banking on something that doesn't happen often.
The trend is your friend.
Oh, but when I say that about William Byron and Denny Hamlin, I don't make any sense. All right, dude.
That's just not a trend.
It was an 80% success rate, Andrew. I'll tell you after we record, Rome. But moving on to the F1 podium, me and Andrew, we're both picking Max Verstappen. There's no reasoning needed there. Rome, are you going to surprise me, or is it going to be Max Verstappen?
It's going to be 3 in a row, Ethan. I got Verstappen winning as well.
Yeah, Verstappen here.
All right.
P2, Ethan and I both have Carlos Sainz on the document.
However, Andrew wrote senior question mark after my Carlos Sainz.
Well, because you didn't put the junior.
No
It's
one says
obviously
Carlos Sainz. Jr. They
Sainz
just say
Jr.
Carlos Sainz, bro. Like, relax. Like,
Come on.
it's a European thing. Why we got to get technical with it? We know what we're talking about here.
So
Trolling
Carlos
hard
Sainz Jr. coming home second for me. My main reasoning is I think the Ferraris are going to be really good around Monaco, as I already mentioned in the preview. But also Leclerc is cursed at Monaco, which means his teammate's going to finish ahead of him.
here. And
So,
he's good at Monaco. He won.
He is good at Monaco. Very good at Monaco.
All right,
But the fact that Leclerc is cursed, I mean, he's cursed.
Yeah. All right, so my P2 is actually going to be Lando again.
Okay.
I think, like I mentioned before, and if you don't mind, I'll actually segue into my P3 because I have his teammate Oscar Piastri in that spot as well. I'm very high on this McLaren team. I think, like I've said before, they're the second best team on the grid right now. Just the way that car looks, the way they're flying around those tracks. Both those guys, I when I was watching at Imola a couple days ago, I swear they had like 5 fastest laps interchangeable throughout that race, and that just tells you that like they're really close to where Red Bull is in their race pace. And like I remember, like Max kept getting like so many fast laps, so many laps, and so many races last year. And now that you actually have a team that's willing to go toe to toe with Red Bull in terms of race pace like that, then that kind of tells you, okay, then they can go toe to toe in the trickiest track on the calendar. So I think, especially since we're going off qualifying too, like it's obvious that it's obvious that Verstappen's getting pole. Yeah. And then I think both Norris and Piastri have been really good qualifying drivers because, dare I say, without the 3-place grid penalty that Piastri got for repeating K-Mag in the, I think it was like Q2, he would have been P2 right next to Max Verstappen. So he put together a great final lap in Q3. So that tells me overall automatically, okay, these McLaren boys are going to contend really nicely with Verstappen and make this very interesting for all levels. So I think I have those 2 McLaren boys going double podium.
And honestly, I was kind of thinking the same thing. Like, if you go look at the revision history of this document, at one point, I had Oscar Piastri in as P3. However, if you look at it now, it is obvious that I did change it. I kind of alluded to it a little bit in the preview. I think that, and Andrew agrees with me, this is a track where Sergio Perez is going to get his groove back, at least somewhat. P3.
Yeah, I agree. He's won there. Last year, I think he won.
He's good there.
My memory.
No, Verstappen won last year. Perez won 2 years ago.
Yeah.
I'm getting old. I can't remember anything anymore. With all that being said, Rome, where in the world can people find you on the internet?
Well, I mentioned this before. You can follow the Starting Grid podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. We're trying to get a following up there. We got to have both you guys on. This is a lot of fun. Thank you guys for having me on this. I got to introduce my friend Shane. He's a co-host on my podcast, and we'll have a great old time over there. So anytime you guys want to come over to the pod, by all means,
we will be there.
Me on yes, for sure. You can follow me on Instagram at RomeJacob1 and at RomeKTV. Those are my 2 Instagram accounts. And on Twitter as well, at RomeKTV as well. That's about it for me. Again, thank you guys so much for having me on. It's been a long one, but I've enjoyed every second of it.
Thanks for coming on, man. Longest episode of the podcast by a large margin. Andrew, I hope you have fun editing this, man. Oh, that's rough.
I think this will be actually a fairly easy edit.
Yeah,
you might be right. We'll see. But that is all we have for you guys. As I said a little bit ago, if you are still here, you are an absolute legend, but also few screws loose. Love y'all. See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
To me, it looked like he actually lost the wheel.
The wheel for Ross Chastain is still and perfect.
Wheel on the track.
Did you leave the wheel loose?
You picked the fine time to leave me loose, wheel.